evening. This time I'm going to call to order the Planning and Zoning meeting, City of Lake City, 2nd of May, 2023. At this time, all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and please remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Lord, thank you for your many blessings and bless our deliberations this day. Give us wisdom to make sound recommendations. We ask for these blessings in your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. You may be seated. Roll call of members, Mr. Angelo.
Ms. McCullum?
Here.
Mr. Nelson?
Here.
Mr. Cooper? Mr. Mann?
Here.
Mr. Carter? And Mr. Leidick?
Present. We're at a quorum in place. We can conduct business. Electronically, the meeting minutes from our meeting of April 4th, 2023 were distributed. I trust everyone's had the opportunity to look over those minutes. At this time, are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes as electronically submitted?
No.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion for their adoption?
Motion that we adopt the minutes.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, hand vote. Unanimous vote, Mr. Angelo. We have meeting minutes and are ready to move forward. Before we begin old business this evening, we do have a representative from the law firm representing the city and the boards and such matters who would like to introduce himself to us and give us some helpful pointers for moving forward through this next year of this board's business.
By way of introduction, I'm Todd Kinnan. I'm the primary city attorney. We have co-counsel on board, which is primarily Danielle Adams and Scott Walker out of Folds of Walker in Gainesville. So from time to time, if I have a scheduling conflict, you may see Danielle or Scott. That firm represents, in addition to Lake City and Live Oak with me, they represent 3 or 4 other cities. Newberry, High Springs, I believe, are 2, and I think they have 1 or 2 more, so they're well versed in policies and procedures. You haven't had an attorney in a while. We had the switchover, so to speak, and it's taken this long to get everything squared away, get everything on schedule. So one of us will be attending the meetings from here primarily, not to upset the apple cart. I've reviewed some of the minutes. Everything seems to be going fine, but it tends to be easier if there's challenges or questions. If someone's here to hear it firsthand and experience it, we can usually address it much quicker than having to go back, pull the minutes, listen to them, and start over from scratch. So that's one of the primary reasons why we'll have coverage. And again, I've reviewed your minutes. The schedule seems appropriate. The only thing we probably are going to recommend adding as a preliminary matter, and I don't know if you've had this issue addressed in the past, but would be to have the board place on the record if they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the petitions before the board that night. Essentially, ex parte communication is something that occurred outside the meeting. An in-depth site review is one thing to drive by and look at the property. That's perfectly okay, would not constitute an ex parte communication. Probably getting out of the vehicle, walking around the property with a map and doing all of those kind of things. Although it's not a communication per se orally, it would be something that's better disclosed on the record. And that just keeps everything a lot cleaner. And so probably tonight, that'll be the only thing I would suggest we add. And other than that, I would say continue on as you're doing. You know, some issues are hard for us to answer on the fly. We don't want to get it wrong. I know that's frustrating to boards and the participants in the audience, but sometimes if they're something more than a nominal question, they need to be researched and an appropriate answer given to avoid future problems and potential litigation. So other than that, look forward to working with you.
All right, I do have one question in that regard, dealing with the powers of this board as it relates to the Historic Preservation Agency.
Right.
Within section 10.3, if you want to pull that one up in your LDRs. In section 10.3, subpart 6, advising and assisting property owners and other persons and groups, including neighborhood organizations who are interested in historic preservation. If a member of this board was to field a phone call in reference to 6, would that constitute an ex parte communication, or would that be us doing our duty?
It would only be an ex parte communication if that particular parcel of property being discussed or given advice as to was to come before the board.
And that's,
You would simply just say, pursuant to that article, I disclosed that I met with the property owner, Jim, on such and such a date, and he gave me a tour of the building. And that way it's on the record what you've done, and that way everybody that has an interest in that subject knows what's been done prior, since all decisions have to be based on the evidence and the testimony presented at this meeting. But just that disclosure lets the public and the rest of the board know that you come in with that. The ex parte would get tricky as far as a recusal if you had a communication which allowed it. You can't have a communication with another board member and a property owner. That would be a potential 119 problem. The other issue would be if a board member said, I had communications, I've looked at the property, I've gone over this set of data, and based on that, I'm ready to go. That would result in recusal because you made a decision prior to the meeting and prior to hearing the testimony and the evidence presented under oath, and it would be appropriate. But other than that, it's just a matter of disclosure.
copy that. That is one of the interesting duties that it has, where it actually says we are allowed to talk to the public in these matters, and it's always been something that has made some barristers a little
It gets tricky, you just don't need to have anybody from the board with you, and then if you make the disclosure and you're not influenced to the point where you've already made a decision prior to the meeting, it's just a disclosure issue.
All right, well, it's good having some representation, some counsel, and a parliamentarian up here again. Any questions, comments, suggestions, greetings, well wishes, etc. for our new barrister?
And then at the end of the meeting, if the board members want to provide me with names and contacts, I'll get the same from you. Because I get so many calls, if your name doesn't pop up, I probably will not answer. So everybody from the city has their own designation, and so if anybody would need to call me with a question before a meeting, on an interpretation of a particular provision, anything of that nature, if you want my contact information, be glad to give it to you. I'll just need to put your number in so that your name comes up and I don't forget you.
And if we call you, is that a billable hour?
That is a billable hour.
There you go. Now we're down to the bottom of it. All right, there being no questions or comments from the board, thank you, Mr. Kennan. Looking forward to working with you.
Yes, sir.
Moving on to old business. Petitions CPA 23-02 and Z 23-02. This is a motion that was placed on, or a series of petitions that was placed on continuance. Do we have a motion from the board to hear this petition that has been placed upon continuance?
Motion to hear CPA 23-02 and Z 23-02.
Elaborate. Second. All right, we have a motion and a second by hand vote. Shall we hear the petition? Very nice. All right. Petition submitted by Carol Chadwick, agent for Tennis Forever LLC as owner, to amend future land use and official zoning atlas of the land development regulations, City of Lake City, by changing the future land use from residential moderate to residential medium density, and changing the zoning district from residential single family 2 to Residential Multifamily 1 on property described as follows, Columbia County parcel 080450000. Ms. Carroll, stand by for just a sec. Mr. Angelo, would you care to introduce and give us a little history on these joint petitions and how many times we've seen them?
All right, so this is for CPA 23-02 and Z 23-02. This is the original application was first heard in January. That original one was withdrawn and then resubmitted to lower the density and the multifamily down from a 2 down to a 1. And the land is conducive for rezoning. It is not contiguous directly to another multifamily parcel. It is separated by the baseball fields. On the opposite side of the baseball fields is another multifamily parcel. And staff has reviewed, and we also have been in communication with the county as far as the traffic. And the county has done a traffic study for Tennis Forever, along with doing a traffic study for the Hunter Creek subdivision. They've done those both individual, and they have gotten those back and have given some feedback on those. And that, but they have not gotten back the overall traffic study for the whole development, but with both of them going in together. And that they're waiting on that traffic study to come back. Once they have that back, Chad said he will communicate that with us. But other than that, at this time, there's no concerns from a zoning standpoint.
And for clarification, the traffic study we're still waiting on, that's not just for the planned residential development and Tennis Forever, that's for the entirety of that section
Correct.
of
Yeah.
the bypass.
Yeah, we've got the individual one for Tennis Forever, and we've got the individual one for Hunter Creek separately, but we have not gotten the combined traffic study back yet. That will
It won't
encompass
just be
everything.
that finite area though, it's the entire
Entire,
corridor.
correct.
Right?
Mhm.
All right, Ms. Carroll, come on down again.
All right.
You swear that the testimony you're about to give this evening, to the best of your knowledge, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address record for Mr. Angelo.
Carol Chadwick, CarolChadwick, 1208 Southwest Fairfax, Glen, Lake City, Florida.
All right, I think I know what you want to try to accomplish this evening, but please explain it again to the board, most notably drawing attention to things that have changed in your submittals.
Well, we went with a lower density for the zoning. At the request of some of the neighbors. We figure we can get what we want on the project with that lower density. And with that, we also had to change the future land use to medium from moderate, so that they are at the same, they're complementary to each other. We did get back the traffic study that we had done from an engineer out of Jacksonville, and we received the county's analysis of that, or their independent analysis of that, which verified that our traffic study was good. And besides that, I mean, we've really not changed anything besides those two key points.
All right. Any other questions or comments from members of the board for the agent of owner? Right, you can have a seat. All right, I think I know why we have a lot of folks in attendance this evening, so I'm about to open up the floor for folks that would like to come up and speak either for or against these two joint petitions. Same admonishments as usual. I do not like that clock on the wall, and I do not like having to turn it on. I think we can all be a lot politer and get to the point and express our opinions if we don't have a ticking time bomb behind us. As always, I'm going to start down at my lower left, move over to my right, go back a row, come back over. When you see the finger pointing at you, feel free to come on up to the podium and speak your piece. And we're all going to remain civil. We are not going to be directing lines of questioning directly to the owner or agent of owner. All of your comments should be addressed to this board. If additional clarification is necessary, this board will ask the question of the agent or of the owner. So with that being said, no one in the front row, let's come to second row. You don't want to speak? Okay. Second row, no one in the second row, going back to third row. Come on down. That's you. Yes?
Me?
Yeah.
I'll be first today.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give this evening to the best of your knowledge and ability is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address of record for Mr. Angelo.
Liz Fryer, 160 Southwest Challenger Lane, Lake City, Florida, 32025. Good evening, everybody. I'm here once again. The only thing that obviously has changed is how they changed it from a higher density to a lower density. But nevertheless, the issues still remain the same. So all I have, since we have discussed this now till it's blue in the face for so many meetings, is my petition along with over 100 signatures, how we oppose this entire plan to be changed and of rezoning. And all the reasons why are also on the petition, so I would like to, if I may, we've done this before, take it to the council so that he can have that on record as of the opposition.
Is this our board's copy or is that the copy
This is
that's
the
going
original.
to council?
This is the originals,
I don't need to go to Mr. Angelo if you're placing that into the record.
that is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very nice. All right, so from where Ms. Fryer was sitting, let's continue moving down that road, ma'am. Sir? City want to get up and say something? All right, jumping across the aisle, you there. Come on down.
So Dylan Adams, D-Y-L-A-N.
Not that part yet.
Okay, we're gonna, sorry, we're all official. I'm used to clocks and people screaming at these meetings. Go ahead.
We don't do that here,
All
sir.
right, go ahead.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this evening to the best of your ability is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very nice. Now that part.
Dylan Adams, D-Y-L-A-N, A-D-A-M-S, 130 North Marion Avenue, Lake City, Florida. So I'm seeing a lot of different things. I work in commercial real estate development, okay, with big companies that want to bring jobs to Lake City. One of the major questions we get from an economic development standpoint is where are these people going to live? Okay, so when you say high density housing, that doesn't necessarily mean income controlled, right? That's the fear from the air park, right? That it's going to be a crime wave. People from the ballparks are going to have all these issues. Well, if you go into any non-secondary market, whether it be Jacksonville, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, any of these large, heavy, high-density areas, you don't have those concerns. You have commercial upon recreational overlapping with residential, okay? You have a public shopping center right out front of a residential complex. You don't have those concerns because they're governed appropriately. That sounds like a governance concern, not necessarily a mixed-use land concern. If you don't have anywhere to live, you're not going to be able to provide housing for those people that are going to provide employment for people in the community. Huge downfall for our area. That's continuously the concern. We've lost multiple projects, including a Buc-ee's to Marion County, because we didn't have the housing to be able to get the head count to supply Ellisville. Okay? People drive 30 minutes, 45 minutes to go to work. It's not going to drive an hour. It's just not going to happen. Okay, rent on a single-family mobile home is $1,500 a month right now in our county. I have several clients that have multiplex units. Duplexes are going to come before this board, okay? Fully rented, 100% capacity. There's nowhere to live. That's a problem. So when we have someone bringing a project on a flat, dry piece of ground on a main thoroughfare with city utilities, we're trying to shut it down because we're gonna upset somebody with a small plane, that's a problem. We have national tournaments that take place here. As long as there's something around it where it's not gonna be some kind of rough, crazy, destitute, platoon type of area, which I think is the concern there for the people with the property values, that's your real concern here. Housing's not the issue. We need it. That's the issue. Thanks.
All right, so moving to the end of the row, coming around, jumping back a row, coming back this way. Sir? Moving down, ma'am, yellow shirt? Come on down.
Thanks.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this evening, to the best of your ability, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address of record for Mr. Angelo.
Mark, M-A-R-K, Devine, D-E-V-I-N-E, 315 Southwest Challenger Lane, Lake City. So I thought it'd be good just to give you a little background of my experience. I've been a consulting engineer since 1976, and I primarily consulted to municipalities, both nationally and internationally. I focused on water resources usually. So when developments would come in to any of my clients, what my client would like to know is what is the impact on the water supply? Water supply, pressure, capacity, fire flow. So they would have me or other engineers do an analysis of that and determine what the impact was, what might need to be done to mitigate any of that impact, and what are the costs of that impact. So therefore, the board could then decide how they would react to the proposed project. So we've been talking about traffic mostly, but also I know in previous documents, there was concern on water and sewer. And from what I hear tonight, there's been a study on one project and a study on the other project, but they haven't completed a study on both projects in the area, which could have quite a significant impact, particularly on traffic. So to me, immediately, it's like, well, how could I make a decision if I don't know what that impact is? And how can the developer want to move forward if they don't know the financial impact of that development? So say the road had to be widened from 2 lanes to 5, to have a turning lane, 2 lanes each way. And there was land that needed to be acquired, purchased. What are those costs? So that cost usually would go back to the developer because it's not required now, and it may not be required under existing zoning. But with zoning changes and a project proposed, then these costs become real. So therefore, I'm a little surprised that that hasn't been completed and a presentation made as to what the changes are that need to be done. And then an analysis of the costs of that, the time it would take, and also the understanding that, well, therefore, if you're requiring this developer, then you would have to pay for it. So therefore, the economic viability of your project can be compromised and certainly altered. So I just find that a little difficult if it was me or my clients to make a decision if they're like, well, what's it gonna do to the water system? Well, we don't know, but we're looking at it. What's it gonna do to the highway? Well, we know this, we know that, but we haven't done both and we really don't know yet. It'd be difficult to make a decision, especially to change something. And then changing something, I believe you have a comprehensive plan or something like that with your zoning laid out for the entire city. So I would expect that that was done over a period of time with zoning consultants, and then with the board interaction, public meetings. So the zoning was created over time, created through a very thoughtful public involvement process, and that's the way that it is as it exists. So then any change, in my mind, would be something that would need to be decided on very carefully, and only after everything has been cleared up, identified, cost, who's paying for what, and what the impacts are. I believe when we've been in here a couple of times, an idea of, well, they could build an overpass. And I thought, are they kidding me? But some people thought, oh yeah, that would solve it. An overpass would be ridiculously expensive. So everything that's going to be done traffic-wise anyway has to be done in the footprint that's already out there. Then beyond that, I believe from what I looked at of the state, that Lake City per capita, per person, has one of the highest crime rates in the state. So a bigger city would definitely have a lot more crime. But if you do it per capita, that makes it more comparable. So an easy conclusion from that would be more people, if it's per capita, more crimes will be committed. Doesn't matter what the type of housing it is, if it's low income or it's multifamily or not. Just by looking at those numbers, they are related to per capita information. So if it's 10 per capita and you doubled your number of people, then you would think, well, crime's gonna go up twice, but it's spread out over a lot of people. So then there's other issues. You mentioned the airport, and I think what the concern there isn't that, oh, these poor people, they need houses to live in because they don't want to commute. Well, I told you I was an engineer for decades. I commuted well over an hour every single day, each way, around Boston, which is miserable, but that's what I had to do. That was my job. Then I had night meetings with clients in far-flung places, and I had to travel there also. So if people have an opportunity to get a job locally, but they might have to live a little further away, then that's what they have to do. And that's what a lot of people will do. So, I guess my general point is, I would like to see a presentation by the engineer, which I asked for last time, as to what's the layout, what's it mean, what's traffic like? And then to be able to tie that in, I think it was Hunter's Grove or something was the other project that was in the area. So that was a gentleman there, very artistically and articulately pointed out the project, where the wetlands were, how traffic was going to be mitigated somewhat, etc. And that person also had 2 colleagues in the audience, as I remember. So there were 3 people here. In the last time we were here for this project, I said, could they make a presentation to show us what's there, what's it going to be, where's it going to be, what's traffic going to be like? And the response was, well, it's hard for them to do that if they don't know they're going to get approved. But as I noted, Hunter's Creek or whatever it was, they made a great presentation. So I would only assume they didn't know if they were going to get approved, but they saw the importance of laying out what the plan was, what the impacts are going to be, what some mitigation might be, how they understand that there's going to be impacts to the neighborhood, and how they've taken that into consideration. So we went to the zoning board, was outside of Gainesville, that I think is the county zoning board. Because it's our understanding that they were originally instrumental in saying, gee, if you're gonna have some commercial establishment and a residential establishment kind of in one development, then the best way to do that is to change the zoning to this. I think that I'm correct on that. So we went through their offices to see, well, what information do they have? Well, the gentleman, first of all, there was a sign on the door that said closed for COVID, but that was in February of this year. So we knocked on the door, guy came to the door, we told him why we were there, and he said, we're not part of that, slammed the door in our face, literally. And so we didn't get any information from them. But it's interesting that they commented on what Lake City should do for its zoning for this project, but don't seem to want to participate in the process or education of the board or the public. Yeah, I talked about that. Just give me a moment if you would. So also on this project, you tabled it previously because you needed more information. So to me, specifically for traffic, and I don't know about water and wastewater, I don't think that that has been completed yet. So at the least, I would offer that you might consider tabling the project, if not honoring the comprehensive zoning plan that the city already has and saying, we don't allow that in this area, and you haven't proved that it's such a great benefit to the rest of the community and may have negative impacts on the community that's already there. So thank you for letting me get that off my chest, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're at the end of this row. We're gonna jump back one. Sir in the back, do you have anything?
No, he said it all.
Very nice. Coming across the aisle, let's see, behind Mr. Dillon. You're here for something else, so we come back a row, move over. Ma'am? You swear that the testimony you're about to give this evening to the best of your knowledge and ability is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address of record for Mr. Angelo.
My name is Dr. Elaine Phillips. Elaine Phillips. I live at 356 Southwest Air Park Glen, Lake City, Florida, 32025-1615. Good evening. I'm a resident of Cannon Creek Air Park. Unfortunately, I'm the longest living resident in the air park. The air park was started in the 1970s by Marshall Douglas, Stephen Smith, and Marlon Fiegel. They purchased the property out in the country from the Herndons, and they set up the lots for the air park and the runway and called it Cannon Creek Air Park. Most of the lots on my street, Air Park Glen, had been purchased by 1983. I came in '89, and my husband and I purchased a lot on Air Park Glen. We started building in '91. At that time, there were very few people at the air park. Jane and Howard Sickle lived there, and Howard was killed because He was told that they would take down the line and the ball that was blocking the runway for coming in for a landing. They took down the ball, but they didn't take down the line, and Howard hit it and crashed. The air park, let me ask you, are any of you pilots or fly an airplane? Do any of you work in an occupation that you have to be separated from other buildings and things because of danger? Are you involved in making fireworks? Let me tell you an experience that city fathers made a terrible mistake on. Back in Clinton, Missouri, the old schools were the normalcy. That was before the colleges. The building was empty. It was no longer being used. It was a brick two-story building. Because it was close to downtown and because it was only a block from the high school and things, they wanted to see that they were getting revenue from this building. So when a gentleman came in and offered to rent the building to make fireworks, they rented the building to him. One night he was working in the building and it exploded. It damaged the high school gymnasium. It destroyed a classroom building and part of the high school main building. The city square with businesses were only a block and a half away, and it destroyed some of those businesses. Now, the city fathers, they thought they were doing something great by renting that building. They were going to make money. It ended up costing them a lot of money to repair the school and the facilities, and thank goodness there were no children in the school at the time. Well, this is something like what is happening to us. Look at Lake City Municipal. Are there houses built up around Lake City Municipal? Close? When an airplane takes off, it can't just go up. And when it comes down, it can't just come down. You have to climb slowly. And when you come in for a landing, you have to descend slowly so that you don't crash. This means that you have to go over property that's not in your air park. If there are houses there, they're going to start complaining about these low-flying airplanes coming over their house. Are their children going to be safe? Will these airplanes crash into us? Maybe we should limit them and not let them fly at certain times. And then they may come to the conclusion, oh, we better shut them down because it's not safe for us. So we need to consider that giving permission for a development that's so close to the air park or is attached to the air park may become a problem in the future and cause us to close down. Now, we started in the 1970s, and we are our own development. We had to put in our own streets, we pave them, we repair them, we have our own water. We are not part of the city as such, but we pay taxes. Our taxes are high. So we support the county and the city. And this should not be taken away from us just because somebody wants to build close to us, not realizing what they can cause. The sports complex. This housing development would be close to the sports complex, right next door. There would be bright lights, cheering, tourists, people using the sports complex. How would the housing development feel about this? They would start complaining about the noise and the bright lights and things of that sort. So is it fair to the sports complex that you put in a housing development that will cause problems? James Montgomery was very instrumental in this community. He did a lot of things for this community. The sports complex is one of them. I remember James saying that he didn't want anything to happen to that sports complex. And his exact words, and I copied them down, he said that you'll be destroying a good thing. If that sports complex is taken away, the city will lose a vital area of its property. Please consider what you're doing to the sports complex and the air park and the homes. Now, that one gentleman mentioned that it wasn't necessary to be concerned about our airplanes. You know, our airplanes work exactly the same as these big jets. We have to climb slowly, we have to descend slowly. If we go too fast or try to do it in too much of a hurry, we would crash. So please don't just consider because we're smaller airplanes that we can be treated differently. We have to be treated the same as a large airplane. You don't see housing developments all around Lake City Municipal because of the fact that they need the space for takeoff and landings. That housing development could be situated somewhere else in the area that would still give the city and the county the tax revenue from it, but it would protect the sports complex, it would protect our airplanes and our homes, it would protect all of the people in the area. And so please consider letting them develop in another section. One other thing I'd like to mention is the fact that what you're doing to the sports complex is not fair. To put a big housing development with people that are going to not like the bright lights and the noise from the sports complex. And that is revenue for our city because we do get people from out of town here to use the sports complex. The housing development can be situated somewhere else where you still get the tax revenue from them, but you would protect all of the property that has been developed there since the 1970s. You would protect what Marlon Fiegel and Marshall Douglas and Steve Smith started. You would protect our homes and our air park. You would protect everybody that's living in an area where they can tolerate the climbing and descending of airplanes. So please, don't put a housing development where it will cause problems for the future. You already gave permission for 300 single-family homes to be developed close by to us, and I hope that doesn't mean the end of it. Do you have any questions? Well, thank you for listening to me, and I hope you will please consider letting this development be placed in another section of the city where it does not affect the takeoff and landing of airplanes and the homes in the area. Thank you.
Mr. Lyday, because I was referred to directly by a comment, may I respond? As a point of order?
You may rebut.
Thank you. I'll wait till she's.
Could I add one more thing before he speaks?
Please do.
They talked about a traffic study being done in the area. All you have to do is live out there and you'll know that that traffic study is not accurate. The traffic is horrendous. We sit for blocks waiting to go through that traffic light 3 and 4 times before we can get to the intersection where we're going to turn. There is horrendous traffic on that road. That would mean that if housing development goes in and there's more traffic, you gentlemen might have to consider making that a 4-lane road out there Now, what is that gonna cost you? It's gonna cost you more than the tax dollars you would take in from the development. So please consider what's going to happen with the increased traffic on that road. Thank you.
Mr. Adams, you were referenced directly. You may rebut.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the time, and I apologize for the second appearance. So in reference, that nice lady said some very sweet things about the air park and dropped some names of some very prominent people in our county that are fairly wealthy people, right? It's all privatized, the air park. I don't think anybody has a commercial plane that flies out of there that generates any tax revenue for our county. Have a couple friends that fly for different independent agencies that live in the air park. Have clients that have commercial properties surrounding the air park. Also referenced was the need to be able to elevate to a certain degree. Not a pilot, could never afford a plane, could afford a house sometimes till the slave market. Have clients that have bucket trucks. The bucket trucks sit several hundred feet in the air approximately. I don't know, I don't have a tape measure that big. Nobody's ever complained to the FAA about trying to land due to the adjacency of those bucket trucks coming across I-75 when they come in. The unfortunates, the concern of the gentleman that died in the 70s or 80s really doesn't have anything to do with this development. We're not talking about a development taking place. We're not talking about retention ponds. We're not talking about any of those things. We're talking about a sheer zoning change. None of this means that tomorrow somebody's going to be out there with a bulldozer building duplexes. Okay, we're talking about a landowner's right to have the ability to provide housing for our community, which in turn provides a workforce. All we do is complain we don't have industry, we don't have tax base, all these things from the city. I hear it all day long about annexation, right? Can we get these parcels annexed in for the tax base? Can we get Nick Patel to build another hotel for the bed tax? We need tourism, we need a 500-acre parcel so we can build a new sports complex. Where are you going to put all of these people? They're not gonna drive from Gainesville to here. It's a different demo and a different workforce. The gentleman from Massachusetts brings up an exact point. He's more than welcome to come back and speak. These are all transplants, okay? These people have come into our community. The influx from sheer number of head count coming into Florida after COVID, they can't get enough RV parks in this county. If you drive to Baker, there's a 300-unit RV park on the side of I-10, okay? We don't have a place to house people. And we're arguing about whether or not it's gonna upset a few landowners that are wealthy. That's the concern I have. I didn't come prepared to speak. That's why I look like I'm at the beach. I apologize. I'm just passionate about this project. I have no vested interest financially in this project, nor do I have anything to do with the property. My concern is our blinders that we put on as a community, where 5 to 10 people get to make all the money and have all the vested interest and get to make all the decisions. What about what's good for the community? That's the concern.
Gentleman from Massachusetts, you were referenced directly. You want to come and offer a rebuttal?
Thank you. I moved here in 2014, so it was well before COVID. And I think people are moving in and out of every state across the country. So I don't think that diminishes their importance to a community or their voice in a democracy. Because they came in and now they aren't welcome. He mentioned that he has friends that have excavators or something that are 100 feet high, but they go up and down the highway. Well, the overpasses on the highway aren't 100 feet high. Have you ever noticed when you drive along, they're not that high. So any vehicle that's on the highway isn't driving with its bucket up and gonna interfere with traffic, air traffic. What was the other comment? The point about housing. Housing is very important, and it's very important for a community. And that's why the city, I'm sure, created their existing zoning comprehensive plan and zoning mapping. trying to identify the best areas for growth, housing, industry, commercial development. But what we're seeing here tonight is, and what I've seen throughout my career, is a developer comes in. And a developer says, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. No, I shouldn't be restricted there. Please let me do this because you need housing. So change the zoning that you've had for years so that I can make more money. That other project, the Hunters Creek, they went from, I forget the number of homes, a couple hundred to like 700 homes. They're not making less money by having 700 homes over a couple of hundred. So this isn't the city making a decision of what's best for the city. Where do we need growth? Where do we need housing? And how should that housing be? This is simply a request from a developer who I'm sure has done the economics and found that this alternative to existing zoning would be more advantageous to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lydick, as I was referenced again, may
I think we're.
one time?
I think we're good.
Okay, just a point, the bucket trucks are fully extended, you can see them from his front door. They don't move, he sells the trucks.
I understand.
Okay, there's about
Right,
200.
but they're not in line with the runway.
Point of order.
Inaccurate.
Yes.
We have a point of order, please.
Yes.
I'd like to continue with these comments so we can go on with our agenda tonight.
Just name dropping to allow additional people opportunities to come up and speak. That's creating a public discussion, not a public comment.
Thank you, sir.
So let's see, we're back there with Ms. Phillips, so we're at the end of the rows now, so now we're gonna start far back row, you're good. Blue shirt in the rear, you wanna come down? You swear testimony you're about to give to the best of your knowledge and ability is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Very good. Name with spelling and legal
First name is
address.
Mark, M-A-R-K. Last name is Winesek, W-I-E-N-C-E-K. 443 Southwest Air Park Glen, Lake City, Florida, 32025. I wasn't going to speak today, but I feel compelled after some of the recent comments. I too commuted to a job that was an hour and a half or more for decades. So it is done. I know it's not done here perhaps, but I think if these communities go and all the numbers of homes that you're proposing, both on this property, Hunter Creek, and yet there's another one that's still coming, I think you're gonna have commutes that are gonna be over an hour even locally. So I think the traffic needs to be looked at, water needs to be looked at. Can I ask the board a question? If these surveys come back negative, that water, sewer, traffic, schools come back negative, will these changes be tabled?
To explain the process, right now we are just deliberating over a petition to change the zoning.
I understand.
There will be other steps when this project comes in front of us during the site plan review process.
But doesn't this set the foundation?
That is when a lot of the studies will have been conducted. The site plan will be designed, the engineers will have had the opportunity to speak with the hydrologists will have the opportunity to speak with the county,
Okay.
et cetera. We're in a very early and preliminary phase of this. Obviously, no property owner is going to go out and hire an architect to design a development of this nature if they can't even get their zoning approved. So it's a multi-step process, and along the way, it will have at least 2 readings at City Council, because for a zoning change, it's a recommendation that comes from this board that moves to City Council, and after 2 readings, it's then voted upon. Am I right about that, Mr. Kennan? So even just to get the zoning, if we make a recommendation here, it still has 2 more public meetings to go through before a vote will even be held.
My only concern is changing the zoning. I'm not even sure how many homes are going to be proposed on this change, but hundreds of homes. I just don't like the idea of that density of homes. if everything goes smoothly and the proposals or the studies are positive and the meetings, are there anybody on the board that looks at the community as a whole and says it's really not congruent with what Lake City is in that area? I mean, is it come down to that, or is it always just hard numbers that the roads will support it, the water will support it? Yes.
Our decisions are guided by public discourse such as this, as well as the land development regulations for the city of Lake City.
I'm not opposed to development. I know there's gonna be development in those properties. I'm just concerned that it's gonna be too high of a density, that's all. And it's got really nothing to do with the air park. It's got something to do with me as a resident here. I'm just fearful that it's gonna be too tight, too congested. Thank you.
Thank you. And then last in line, ma'am, against the wall, would you like to speak? All right. This time, everyone's had the opportunity to weigh in on one. You pulled this last time where you tried to come down here afterwards.
I just want to.
A question.
Yes.
I don't want to read in the newspaper about how we were here for 3 hours again.
We haven't been here 3 hours since the first meeting that we had about 100 people here. The question I have, because the gentleman addressed the fact of the needs for growth for residential high density. I thought that this project was being brought in as tenants forever, and the reason the zoning was going to be changed to make these apartments was for students, strictly students, to be brought in. That's my only question, because that's how it was justified. And now all of a sudden, this gentleman is bringing up the question, the need for more housing, but that's not how it all originated. The zoning was going to be changed because Tennis Forever was going to build, supposedly, tennis courts and apartments for tennis players. And now other things are being brought up before, and this is right now, as you said, the very preliminary stage, but things continuously keep changing from what was originally stated to what they're doing. It's just a little concerning for our community. It's got nothing to do with the air park, the community as a whole. I don't like being misled. I'm sure nobody likes to be misled. Don't say one thing and then change it to something else, or comment that is something else that is entirely different from what it originated. And that's the only thing I have to say.
All right. Thank you for keeping that brief. All right. There being no more individuals wishing to speak either. Ms. Chadwick?
I would like to address some of the comments if possible.
Very nice. As the agent, you have the right to the final word on this.
Well, first I would like to point out to the members of the board that the other development that's going close to that was actually a planned residential development, which is required to have a full site plan done before they can apply for rezoning.
That's a PRD.
And that is why they had that available to them. Let's see, what else? As for the runway protection zone, we are nowhere near a runway protection zone. There is no way that we are regulated at all because of the airport. And I would also like to ask, have there ever been any complaints? I mean, there are many homes that are closer to the airport than what this will be. Have they complained and tried to get the airport shut down? I'm curious. I would wonder if anybody had complained and why everyone would assume that these people would automatically do that. Now, I'd also like to say that developers often do rezone property to match with what they're going to do. That is just how it works. And as for the traffic study, our traffic study shows what we need to do for this development. And we can't plan, say, oh, we have to do all this because somebody's doing something somewhere else. Now, we'll definitely take that into account. And if that road needs to be widened, we will make it available to the city as an easement or dedicated right-of-way. We have no problem doing that. We've already spoke to the city about the sewer and water. And these are all things that are going to be addressed in the site plan process. But we've met all of the requirements in the land development regulations to change the zoning and land use of this property. And just because some of the neighbors don't want it, doesn't mean that it shouldn't be approved. Let's see, is there anything else? No, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. All right, at this time, do we have a motion to close public comment? Motion from Ms. Mary, second from Mr. Sean. By hand vote, all in favor of closing public comment phase of the petition? Hands down. Signal likewise if you're opposed. All right, public comment on this is closed. Discussion amongst members of the board and with city departments. Mr. Angelo, I have a couple of questions that you may be able to assist with that I was tracking on my notes here while the points were being brought up by members of the public during comment. Looking at this petition and seeing that it is a change from a future land use of residential moderate to residential medium density, those terms, when it was brought up that the city zoned this in a certain way umpteen years ago, am I reading this correct? This is a shift from a former county zoning designation to a new city zoning designation, right?
No, not on this one. This one would be a city zoning to a city zoning.
Okay. I thought the moderate term in there for the future land use was a holdover from pre-annexation.
No, the moderate means that it has a density of 4 units per acre, where the medium would have a density of 8 units per acre, which would allow for a max build out if everything was in the urban world would have 175 units, but they're proposing about 80.
Okay, so this is all fully brought up to city zoning standards. This isn't one of the problem children we still have in the database.
Correct.
That still retains certain aspects of its original county zonation.
Correct.
And how many years ago was this brought into a city class of zoning following its annexation?
That I don't know right off the hand. I'd have to look it up and see when it was rezoned. I'd have to go back and look at the ordinance.
All right, and then what is the name of the county road at the end of the runway at Lake City Municipal? Is that 245 that connects that Sunoco to US Highway 90 there?
I believe so, I'm not sure.
Okay, and
Price Creek Road.
no, that goes through the campus. I'm talking about the other side of the runway where we park our air tankers. And on the opposite side of that road, in addition to the state forestry station, the outside of the fence of the municipal airport is just nothing but homes along that road, right? Right across the street from the runway?
Correct.
Okay. And then finally, my last question, is any part of Cannon Creek Air Park within the city limits of the city of Lake City?
No, it is not.
Okay, so those residents, other than the businesses they may own and operate, none of their share of ad valorem taxes is going to the city. So when they say we pay city property taxes, that's a mistake.
Yeah, all their taxes would go to the county if they're in the county. The only thing that the city would collect if they're on city water, city sewer, then they would collect the fees for the sewer and water, but other than that, they would be strictly, all the fees would go to the county.
Okay, but no portion of the air park itself lies within city limits?
Correct.
Okay. Those are the only 4 questions I needed clarification on. Does anyone else from the board have issues requiring clarification or points of discussion amongst members of the board?
Doesn't the state require some sort of, there's a runway zone associated with every airfield, isn't there? Like, what could be, how far out from the landing that there couldn't be any property?
Right, there is a protected runway zones at the ends. I'm not sure of the exact footages and how this would play into this, because I know the Hunter Creek did not fall into that category either.
And it was closer to the runway than this project, correct? Okay. All right, any other, did Steve just have to step outside for a minute?
Yes.
Did he wish to weigh in on this from a utilities or Department of Growth Management standpoint?
I can step out.
Please do. All right, from a departmental standpoint, Mr. Steve, any changes from last time we spoke? What do all the parties have to say regarding transportation?
So we are still where Mr. Angelo brought us up to. We do have the two traffic studies back, but we do not have the traffic study holistically. So that is still on the table. We have, to the regard of utilities, we have addressed the utilities and the double feed that the water will take and the contractor's expense as far as running the sewer to Sisters Welcome. None of that information has been put in paper. They've just looked kind of what they were gonna do. One of the things that come up was the housing for Hunter and Tennis is gonna be just a small 25 house development to start with. And that really hinged a lot on the sewer side of it. Some of Tennis's information, I'll just call it Tennis, said that they could take some of their stuff to the gravity side, so it was kind of two different animals. So that all has been looked at. Until we got past this point though, the DNC director hadn't put together what it was gonna take to put meters to each house and so forth and so on. So as far as the utility standpoint, we're right where we were. As far as the traffic standpoint, we're still waiting on Chad to give us the holistic, for everything. Now that accounted everything, not just Tennis Forever, but that did account for everything.
And that's the entirety of that road corridor from the intersection there just east of Tennis.
Correct. And
all
that was
the way to the next major arterial
That's
thoroughfare.
correct. That's what the county recommended. They wanted to see what everything looked like. So that's where we are. To Ms. Chadwick's point, they did get theirs back and we did get Hunter's. But the county in the beginning requested to look at it all, to your point, everything from road to road. We do not have that back yet.
Okay. Anything else for departments? Okay, thanks, Steve. At this time, do we have a motion to either approve, disapprove, or recommend the tabling of petitions CPA 23-02 and Z 23-02?
Move to approve the two motions as presented.
Motion to approve, Mr. McMahon.
2302 and Z 23-02.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
We have a second on the motion from Mr. Nelson. Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays on the petition?
Ms. McCollum?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
And Mr. Leidig?
Nay. Non-unanimously, the motion passes that we make recommendation to City Council that they ratify and approve CPA 23-02 and Z 23-02 as presented. Moving on to new business, site plan review 23-04, petition submitted by Dalton Kurtz, acting as agent for Four Brothers 2020 LLC owner for site plan review for Florida Gateway Drive RV Park and Commercial Highway Interchange Zoning District and located upon parcel 02714-014, regulated by Land Development Regulations, City of Lake City, Section 4.15. Mr. Kurtz?
You and Mr. Angelo come, you guys run down first?
Just need you down front for when we call on you.
All right, this is for SPR 23-04. It's for Florida Gateway Drive RV Park. They are looking to put an RV park right next to where the log home facility is. And then you have the Camping World RV dealership right there. So they're looking to put it right at the end of that road. And it is conducive for use. They have went through the necessary steps to require the zoning and the special exception that they needed. And per section 4.15.5.2. And that was approved on the April 4th agenda last month. All the staff had reviewed the development, and as far as the development goes, the only thing we're waiting on is from Suwannee River Water Management. We have not received the permit from them. So the recommendation would be to, if approved by the board, would do a conditional approval pending the outcome of the Suwannee River Water Management approval.
Understood. Anything else for Mr. Angelo from members of the board introducing the petition? Thank you, Robert. Mr. Curtis. You swear the testimony you're about to give this evening to the best of your knowledge and ability is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address of record to Mr. Angelo, please.
Dalton, D-A-L-T-O-N, Kurtz, K-U-R-T-Z, Live 21313, 180th Street, Live Oak, Florida, 32060. As Mr. Angelo explained, this is basically the site plan approval process of this. He and I did speak earlier on getting conditional approval pending the stormwater management permit approval. And we actually met with them this morning on site. And to be frank, we got hammered pretty hard. They are redrawing the wetland lines out there. We're gonna keep the site plan as is. What's gonna happen is I'm gonna present to the clients, they can either purchase wetland mitigation credits or reduce the footprint of the project itself. That one is gonna fall on them, but I figured next time you guys see me, you at least have a heads up as to what the main issue is. But other than that, plans are the same, 2 ponds. We're gonna be running approximately 600 feet of water line and 300 some feet of force main at no cost to the city. I may have those backwards, but 600 for one and 300 for the other. But that's the extent of where we're at. Are there any questions from the board?
This is what, the third, fourth time we've seen you here?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. I think we've seen quite enough of this project, it would seem. I don't have anything in particular.
So you might come back with a reduced number of units?
Correct, yes. Based on what the client wants to do, because what's gonna happen is when we designed the project, we designed it based off the wetland lines that a wetland specialist has designated.
Okay.
The Water Management District sent their rep out. They said, no, we think the wetland lines are about 60 feet farther out this way. So this project is now 60 feet inside of the wetlands. They can still build there. They have to just now cut a check to the Water Management District.
Or have a smaller.
Or have a much smaller footprint. And there's, a certain amount of, a threshold. We got X amount of spaces. We can generate X amount of revenue to pay for this project. Once it crosses below that, then, they may not proceed with it. They may make some changes, but that's the big thing we're hung up on right now.
All right, any other questions for agent of owner? Be seated.
Thank you.
This time, is there anyone else in attendance that would like to speak either for or against petition SPR 23-04 as submitted by agent of owner? Yes, you do. Or actually, I remind you, you are still under oath.
Thank you,
How about
sir. I
that?
appreciate the candor. So, big proponent for this.
We will need your name though.
Dylan Adams, D-Y-L-E-N, ADAMS, 130 North Marion Avenue. So, big proponent for this project. Do not have any fiduciary responsibility to any of the clients, nor the four brothers from Burbank, California that are attempting to build this really nice RV park next to Camping World, which makes sense out there at the interstate on the side of the service road. I think it'll give huge upswing and uptick for those people that are tourists that are traveling. It'll create a stopping point for us for commerce, not only along the 90 corridor, but also 47 that's coming along well. What we do not have is we don't have anything between 90 and 47 other than, like I mentioned in the previous comment, bucket trucks or the old Sitel building. So this will give us a big footprint on the right-hand side in between the two exits, other than a shopping center and a swamp on the left, okay? Huge project. I think if it goes well, we'll have a lot of development on the backside where those other hotels are as well coming forth. So definitely for this project.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak either for or against the petition as submitted? Right, seeing none, do we have a motion on the floor to close public comment?
Motion to close public comment.
Motion, Mr. Mary, second from Mr. Sean. Hand vote, all in favor? Very nice. Let the record show that was unanimous hand vote. Discussion amongst the board. We've seen this quite a bit. Have there been any ex parte communications amongst anyone on the board with any of the petitioners or members of the board outside of these chambers? Seeing and hearing none, we can move forward. Mr. Angelo, this give the city any heartburn at all?
No, as long as they get the approval from Swanee River Water Management, that would be our biggest concern, which, that would be the governing body in that situation.
Very nice. Mr. Kennan, since we have you here, ordinarily the language we would use when moving forward with this, if there is a motion to approve, the language we would use is a motion to approve contingent upon favorable remarks received from Water Management District.
It would be contingent on approval of a water management permit.
Okay.
And before, as I understand what's been said tonight, before that permit will be issued, they either have to reduce the footprint or purchase environmental mitigation credits from some other piece of property, so it's reduce your number of lots for RVs, or it's pay for the 60 feet times however long that is in environmental mitigation credits.
Okay, so as our legal eagle over there, when the motion gets made, it would be made, quote, contingent upon permitting from Water Management District.
Correct. So the motion which someone can adopt would be the board can vote to approve. The application is stated contingent upon Swanee River Water Management issuing an appropriate permit for the project.
Okay, so contingent is the word you want to see us using from now on. Sweet. All right. At this time, do we have a motion on the floor to either approve or disapprove petition SPR 23-04 as presented by agent of owner?
Move to approve pending approval of the contingent on the Swanee River Management permit.
And just for the future, not being appropriate. If I was to draft a motion, if someone said so moved, as long as Robert got it in the record. So saves having to repeat.
Oh, nice.
We do that at council members, or council functions very often. If they need help on the wording, I can.
And our last barrister didn't give us that option.
And you can say so moved as long as the record reflects that someone has adopted that verbiage in its entirety.
Very nice, please do so.
All right, Robert, I've already done it. Did you get it down?
Yep, I got it.
You wanna read it back so someone can second it?
I don't have it written down all the way, but when I go back and watch the video and put my minutes together.
So essentially, it would be vote to approve the project as presented contingent upon the issuance of the appropriate water management district permit.
That is a very fine motion, sir. Do we have a second on that motion? Second. Ms. Mary. All right, Mr. Angelo, please call the yeas and the nays.
Ms. McCollum?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Mann?
Yes.
And Mr. Leidy?
Yay. All right, passes unanimously. Good job, go forth, do great things. All right, final item on the new business agenda, petition SPR 23-10, petition submitted by Carol Chadwick as agent for Affiliated Property Management, owner, for a site plan review for Aspire Dental Addition, commercial intensive zoning district located on parcel 07604-102, which is regulated by Land Development Regulations, Section 4.13.
All right, this one is for SPR 23-10 for Aspen Dental. They're wanting to put an addition on the corner of their building. It's about 700 square feet on top of the 3,200 square feet that they have now, which would give them 3,977 square feet. A dental office is conducive in this district per the LDR 4.13.2 and 4.12.2.5. However, per section 4.12.11.5, a dental office is required to have one parking space for every 150 square feet of space. With the addition, they would have 3,977 square feet, and that would give them a total of 27 parking spaces required. They currently have 8 paved parking spaces and a gravel section that they use for parking also, which would house about 8 to 9 more parking spaces in. Other than that, the staff has no other concerns other than the parking at this time.
All right, Ms. Chadwick, I remind you that you are still under oath. However, because he's probably closed one folder and opened another, why don't you go ahead and give him your address again?
1208 Southwest Fairfax Glen, Lake City, Florida. All right.
All right.
Well, I would just like to point out that although the site plan is very good looking, I did not actually do the site plan myself for this project. I did all of the reports in the application. Right now, I'm actually a patient in Aspire Dental. I don't know if any of you guys go there or not. Great dentist. But to go in there, I know that I've not ever had a problem parking. And I spoke at length with Dr. Harvey about what is going to go in this addition. And it is going to be one more chair for a patient. So there would be one additional patient potentially throughout the day. Now, we do have, there are, let's say 10 parking spaces that are gravel. That takes us up to 18. And in the existing asphalt driveway, I'm not sure if it's drawn completely correctly because it's wide enough to parallel park there because I've done that on an occasion. And Dr. Harvey said he would be happy to add a few more parking spaces where he could. I believe we identified 3 additional spaces that could be added. And that's, so we'd be up to around 23 parking spaces, including the gravel parking.
All right. Anything else for the board?
No, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions for Agent DeBoner? Good. This time, is there anyone else in attendance that would care to speak either for or against petition SPR 23-10?
Mr. Chair, not to speak for or against, but rather just an information item. Staff is reviewing the LDR in regards to this particular petition and a few more. When they are looking at putting square footage on and it requiring parking spots for that, if the square footage does not require the additional pedestrian traffic coming in and out of the facility, we're trying to look at that and determine if that needs to be modified or rewritten. So if for the purpose of the discussion, I'd just like to know that we are going to be looking at that internally. I don't know that it would affect the approval or disapproval of it, but just know that we are looking at that.
Right, and what I'm concerned about is being that we are below the parking threshold for the square footage, for that type of office, wouldn't that trigger the necessity of having to convene a board of adjustment to do an exception prior to being able to approve a site plan? Because what we're being asked to do would be to approve a site plan that is not in conformance with the LDRs and has not received a form of special exception, AKA a variance. We kind of got to go by the LDRs as our legal guide at bare minimum. Does it meet the requirements? In this case, what I'm hearing from all parties is that it does not. Obviously, it may take a while to get some language in front of City Council to do a revision to the LDRs, but if I'm reading between the lines correctly, are you asking for a tabling until such time as we can either get this in front of a board of adjustment, or you can attempt to publicly notice and quickly push through much needed revisions to our LDRs to allow us to do this without a board of adjustment?
Yes, sir, it depends if it's an ordinance or not. I believe Mr.
The
Kennon.
ordinance would take 2 readings, and to echo those sentiments, as the board knows, you're required to base your decision on substantial competent evidence. The most you have is what is existing as far as parking, with the 8 lots and up to 10 for gravel. All you have after that is we're going to try to put some more in. I'm not speaking against the project, I'm just saying you have to have the adequate evidence to show that the requirements of the LDR are met, and that would be, according to staff, the 27 parking spots. So I would just caution the board to make sure that if you were to approve something like this, that you did have competent substantial evidence that you had the 27 parking places that would be so designated moving forward. I'm not sure off the top of my head if a variance would even be appropriate, because typically if the need for a variance is related to a site plan versus a hardship created by the LDR, there's some limitations on that. But it's something that's something we would have to look into. But to echo Steve's, I'm aware of several projects that the parking is fine now until they go to add on. And I echo Steve, this could have been a lab extension, which would have created no pedestrian increase in traffic or parking. However, our LDR does not allow for an exception without it being a special exception or a variance to deviate from those parking places. Ours is based on plain square footage. Without any discretion as to the type of any improvements or additions. And that's one thing we're wanting to look into sooner than later is, number one, can they be lowered? And number two, this North Florida Planning Council will have to help us on this, is what language and to what extent can we incorporate some discretion into a board like this to have the property owner describe what the addition will do as for a determination of an increase in pedestrian traffic.
And I know lawyers don't like shooting from the hip, but if you had to wager a guess, what sort of a time frame are we looking at to have all this cleared up? From planning council to city council, start to finish, soup to nuts.
If I had to guess, 60, 90 days to have the out. Because of what there needs to be a lot of changes potentially to the LDRs for exactly the comments made earlier tonight, that some of these have been around forever. A doctor's office with an addition, but 40% of his clientele is now telehealth. He's reducing his pedestrian footmark, but our LDRs haven't caught up with technology. So a wholesale revision would take substantially longer, and what we're looking at with staff in the last 2 or 3 days is going through with the help of North Florida Planning Council and going through and pulling out just the parking in the different zoning areas and seeing what we can do to make those more fair.
Realistic.
Fair, realistic, and maybe hopefully to give the board some discretion on saying, all right, the minimum's 6, but or the maximum's 10, whatever, and where there could be some deviation from that with maybe specific findings on the record. That, for instance, for Aspire, this is a lab that's not going to create any more patients. And we have a lab tech already there. He or she just needs more room to do their work. But right now, the board doesn't have that discretion, and the LDR doesn't provide the discretion. It's based on square footage, and that's calculated less like closets and areas that aren't used to create pedestrian traffic.
All right, so at this time, we're looking at either approving without justification granted us in the LDR, granting a disapproval and them having to refile and start the whole process over again and put down another fee, et cetera. We're looking at the option of tabling this until such time as either it can appear before the Board of Adjustment and they can plead their case for a potential variance, or a 90-day LDR revision cycle to do some basic housekeeping measures.
And if they would be amenable to that, we could do like you did with tennis and just have it continued, so you didn't have to table it and untable. And if we got all of this done in 45 days, then obviously what's this month, May, we could notify them that we're looking at a July instead of an August meeting of the P&Z.
Okay.
And that would be staff's recommendation, sir,
And that's staff's recommendation?
to continue it until we can look at the revisions.
Okay, so not a tabling, but a continuance. And then the proponent during that continuance can either seek to come before the Board of Adjustment or just wait it out until the LDRs have a partial, not a full-blown revision cycle.
Yes, but like you say, we're talking about now just for this particular project, which is sort of brought it to the forefront. We've got somebody wanting to add brand new space, tax base increase, et cetera. But with the language we're working with, we can't do that. And the city's losing out on that revenue for these types of additions.
Okay. Does everyone on the board understand what's being asked of us?
And Steve can be contacted, 30 days from now, we'll be able to tell the owner, where we're at. Because again, the one good thing about having a co-counsel is, I've got 2 or 3 meetings next week, but I've got somebody I can say, I need you to work on a project. And that would be my co-counsel, and so we're doing 2 things at once.
Nice. All right, thank you, Steve. All right, Miss Carol, I hate to have you come back up here after all that Tennis Forever stuff.
I don't mind at all.
You've heard your options.
I think we would like to continue the project. It seems like the best option at this time. And I would like to say, if I'd actually done the site plan myself, it would have been taken care of prior to coming here. So we'll have to speak with the owner and come up with a plan.
At this time, do we have a motion from the board to request a continuance?
Move to continue.
Ma'am?
So,
Nelson on the second. By a hand vote, all in favor of granting the continuance? Hands down. Let the record reflect that was a unanimous vote to continue this until either a Board of Adjustment meeting or a LDR revision cycle. Seeing no workshop questions.
Just to clarify, or if they revise the site plan and have competent substantial evidence they have 27 parking
there you
places,
go.
then obviously we could deal with it much quicker. But that's the good thing about a continuance. It gives the owner the flexibility to work on it while we're working.
Okay. With no workshop items on our agenda, do we have a motion to adjourn planning and zoning?
Move to adjourn, take a 5-minute break.
Move to adjourn and take a 5-minute break with a second. Hand vote. Hands down. All opposed, like sign. All right, we stand in adjournment. Let's take a 5-minute break for our necessaries, and then we'll come back and hit planning or hit historic preservation and call it an evening.
Thank you.
IT